The diner's neon sign flickered against the darkening sky, casting shadows across the cracked parking lot where a small boy stood pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass. Inside, the warmth glowed like a promise. The sizzle of burgers on the grill, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of satisfied customers. But for 10-year-old Marcus, that warmth might as well have been a world away. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His stomach cramped with a hunger so fierce it made his vision blur at the edges. His mother was 3 states away, working double shifts at a factory to send money home to his grandmother's house where he was supposed to be staying. But Grandma had gotten sick last week, and the hospital bills had eaten through what little money they had left. Marcus had been trying to stretch the last $5 in his pocket for days. But it was finally gone, spent on a loaf of bread he'd shared with his grandmother before she told him to go out. To get some air, to stop watching her struggle to breathe. So he'd walked and walked, until he found himself here at Johnny's Diner on Route 49, staring at families laughing over plates of fries and milkshakes, wondering what it felt like to be that carefree again. The door chimed as he pushed it open. Every head turned, and Marcus felt the weight of their stares. His clothes were wrinkled, his sneakers held together with duct tape, and he knew he looked exactly like what he was, a kid with nowhere to go and nothing in his pockets. "Can I help you?" The voice was sharp, cutting through the diner's ambient noise like a knife. Marcus looked up to see a man in a crisp manager's uniform, his name tag reading Dale in bold letters. His arms were crossed, his expression already set in disapproval. I was wondering if maybe I could wash dishes or take out trash." Marcus's voice cracked. "For some food? I'm real good at cleaning, sir. I promise I'll work hard." Dale's laugh was harsh and humorless. "This isn't a charity, kid. We don't do handouts, and we don't hire children. You got money?" Marcus shook his head slowly, his cheeks burning with shame. "Then you need to leave. You're making my customers uncomfortable." Dale grabbed Marcus by the shoulder, his grip firm and unyielding, and steered him toward the door. "Please, sir. I haven't eaten in—" "Not my problem." Dale pushed open the door and practically shoved Marcus onto the pavement. "There's a shelter 2 miles north. Try there." The door slammed shut, and through the window, Marcus watched as Dale brushed his hands together as if ridding himself of dirt, then returned to his position by the register with a satisfied smile. A few customers had witnessed the exchange. Some looked away uncomfortably, others whispered to their companions, but no one intervened. Marcus sat down on the curb, pulling his knees to his chest. The tears came hot and fast, and he didn't bother wiping them away. 2 miles to the shelter. He could barely stand, let alone walk that far. The evening air was turning cold, and he had nowhere to go. The rumble started low, like distant thunder, then grew louder, the deep, powerful roar of motorcycle engines. Marcus looked up to see a formation of bikes turning into the parking lot, their chrome gleaming under the streetlights. There must have been 20 of them, big men and women in leather jackets, their bikes customized with intricate paint jobs and gleaming detail work. They parked in a neat row, and as they dismounted, Marcus noticed the patches on their backs. Iron Brotherhood MC. The leader was a mountain of a man with a gray beard braided down his chest and arms covered in tattoos. But his eyes, when they landed on Marcus, were surprisingly gentle. "You all right there, son?" The biker crouched down, bringing himself to Marcus's eye level. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't come. He just shook his head. "You hungry?" This time, Marcus nodded. The biker, his vest read Bear, stood up and looked at his crew. "Guys, we're eating here tonight." Then he extended a hand to Marcus. "Come on, kid. You're with us." Inside the diner, Dale's smile vanished the moment the bikers walked in. Marcus tucked safely in the middle of their group. The other customers went silent, forks suspended halfway to mouths, conversations dying mid-sentence. "We need your biggest table," Bear announced, his voice filling the space. "Party of 21. He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "This young man here is our guest of honor." Dale's face went pale, then flushed red. We don't have room for— You've got 4 empty tables right there." Bear pointed. Push him together. We'll wait. There was something in Bear's tone that suggested this wasn't a request. Dale swallowed hard and snapped his fingers at the waitstaff, who scrambled to rearrange the tables. As they settled in, Marcus found himself seated between Bear and a woman with purple hair and kind eyes who introduced herself as Rhonda. The bikers were nothing like he'd expected. They joked with each other, asked Marcus about school, and treated him like he belonged. "What'll you have, kid?" Bear asked when the waitress came around, deliberately avoiding Dale's direction. I don't have any money," Marcus whispered. "Did I ask if you had money? I asked what you wanted to eat." Marcus's eyes went wide. "A cheeseburger?" "Make it a double cheeseburger," Bear told the waitress, "with fries, onion rings, and a chocolate milkshake. Actually, bring him one of everything on the kid's menu. Growing boy needs options." From across the diner, Dale watched with barely concealed fury. He approached the table, his jaw tight. "I'm going to need to see payment up front for a party this size." Bear slowly turned to look at him. "You asked that kid for payment up front, too?" Dale's face went red. "That's different. He was a hungry child?" Rhonda interrupted, her voice ice cold. "And you threw him out onto the street?" "This is my establishment, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone." "Is that so?" Bear pulled out his phone. "Because I'm pretty sure what you did to that kid could be considered something else entirely. And I've got about 50,000 social media followers who'd love to hear about a diner manager who kicks out starving children." The color drained from Dale's face. "Now wait a minute. We'll pay our bill," Bear continued. "Every penny, plus a generous tip for the waitstaff who actually do the work around here. But here's what's going to happen first. You're going to apologize to Marcus, and you're going to mean it." The entire diner had gone silent. Every customer was watching now, phones out, recording. Dale looked around at the sea of judgmental faces, at his own staff who were nodding in agreement, at the bikers who had formed a protective wall around Marcus. He had no choice. Dale walked to where Marcus sat, and for the first time, he really looked at the boy. The hollow cheeks, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly as they rested on the table. "I'm sorry," Dale said quietly. "That was wrong. I should have helped you." Marcus nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. The food came out in waves: burgers and fries, chicken tenders and mac and cheese, pie and ice cream. Marcus ate slowly at first, then faster as his body remembered what it was to be fed. The bikers told stories, made him laugh, and for the first time in weeks, Marcus felt safe. When the bill came, Bear paid it without looking, then added a $100 tip. But before they left, he did something that made several customers, and even a few of his fellow bikers, wipe their eyes. He handed Marcus an envelope. "There's $300 in there," Bear said. "Get your grandmother what she needs. And here's my number. You call me if you or she needs anything else. Understand?" Marcus couldn't speak. He just threw his arms around Bear's waist and held on tight, his thin shoulders shaking with sobs of relief and gratitude. "You're not alone, kid," Bear whispered. "Not anymore." The bikers escorted Marcus to his grandmother's house, making sure he got home safely. As they rode away into the night, their engines rumbling like protective thunder, Marcus stood on the porch with the envelope clutched to his chest. Inside, his grandmother was sleeping peacefully, her breathing easier than it had been in days. Marcus sat beside her bed and counted out the money, tears streaming down his face. It was enough for her medicine, enough for food, enough to breathe for a little while longer. The next morning, Dale arrived at the diner to find his picture all over social media. The video of him throwing out Marcus gone viral. The Iron Brotherhood's post about the incident had been shared tens of thousands of times. But more importantly, the community had responded. The local church organized a fundraiser for Marcus and his grandmother. A nearby factory offered his mother a better-paying job closer to home. And the diner's owner, who'd been out of town, called Dale into the office for a conversation about compassion and what it really means to serve the community. Sometimes, kindness comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the people who look the toughest have the softest hearts. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to see another person's humanity to change everything. Marcus never forgot the bikers who saved him that night. And years later, when he'd grown up and built a life of his own, he made sure to pay that kindness forward, one hungry kid at a time.